to Writing and Fighting. It is June 18th, 2020. And this panel is called Race, Representation, and Culture in Combat Sports. I am Nancy Kidder. I am an adjunct professor at American University, where I teach a class called Writing and Fighting on the literature of combat sports. And I'm going to introduce everyone in a second. I just wanted to say something very quickly, because I've really been taking in a lot lately. I am a white American. I recognize more and more how our power structure is engineered to maintain my privilege while marginalizing people of color. But awareness alone does not lead to behavior change. In an article a couple weeks ago by Corey Erdman in Medium, he noted that like Black Americans, Black boxers have fewer job opportunities and less life expectancy. If you need further proof of this disparity in combat sports, there was recently an article in the Journal of Racial and Ethnic Health Disparities, where they published a long-term study that gathered the data of all heavyweight champions from the years 1889 to 2019. Their conclusion: compared with white boxers, non-white boxers tend to die younger and have lower social positions in later life. Conviction rates were higher also among non-white boxers, 17.6% compared to 1.3% in white boxers. Finally, I recently rewatched Do the Right Thing by acclaimed Black filmmaker Spike Lee. In a famous scene, a longtime customer, Mookie, played by Spike Lee, asked the Italian pizza manager, Pino, played by John Turturro, how he reconciled his everyday racism towards Blacks when his favorite basketball player is Magic Johnson. Pino's reply: they're Black, but they're not. They're not really Black. They're more than Black. It's different. No, it's not. So I want to welcome our panel. Today we have Janica Lewis, Professor of Literature and the Director of Women's Gender Studies at University of North Carolina, Charlotte. She specializes in African American literature and has written a book, Freedom Narratives of African American Women, and articles on representations of play and sports, specifically baseball and African American literature. We also have Louis Moore, Professor of History at Grand Valley State University, where he teaches African American history, civil rights, sports history, and US history. His research and writing examines the interconnections between race and sports. He's the author of 2 recently published books, I Fight for a Living, Boxing and the Battle for Black Manhood, 1880 to 1915, and We Will Win the Day, the Civil Rights Movement, the Black Athlete, and the Quest for Equality. He has also written for a number of online outlets, including the Shago League, Vox, Vocative, and has appeared on news outlets including NPR, MSNBC, and BBC Sports. We also have Sean Black here, a Los Angeles-based professional wrestler trained by the Santino Brothers Wrestling Academy. And he has worked for numerous independent wrestling promotions across the US. Known as the Urban Juggernaut, Sean is also the owner of Amped Up Wrestling, co-owner of Compton Mania Wrestling, and a model for Fat Boy Movement clothing. In addition to rising the ranks of indie wrestling and being a board member of the Hip Hop Church LA, Sean also uses the art and craft of pro wrestling for social good, working with Ability First in LA, a program that provides a variety of programs designed to help people with disabilities achieve their personal best throughout their lives. Finally, my co-chair, Tunisha Singleton, who is an adjunct professor of media psychology at Fielding Graduate University, where she earned her PhD in the same field, specializing in identity, digital disruption, and understanding the human experience and technology's role in it. With a decade of experience in traditional entertainment, Tunisha has turned her attention to tackling her passion in sports, aiming to equip athletes and progressive brands with marketing and media management to reinforce authentic storytelling, culture, and conversation, which we're going to do now.
Yes. Thank you, Nancy. And thank you, everybody, for being here. I think this is, we've been doing this for a while, and creating these conversations is very, very important. And we know there's no expiration date on them. There's a lot left that we have to do. And before I start asking questions for everybody on our panel today, I want to start by telling just 2 quick personal stories that show some parallels between Black identity, sports, and society to just kind of get your brains wet first to set some context for this conversation. So the first time I got called the N-word was in the 5th grade. So I was about 9, 10 years old, and I was playing tetherball. And the rules at my school, I grew up in Riverside, California. So the rules on the court were if you beat everybody in line, that's considered going around the world. I don't know if this was the same at like other schools, but I beat everyone in line and there was only one kid left, and it was a 6th grader who was a bit of a bully, but never really said anything to me before because, you know, she was a 6th grader, I was a 5th grader. And she stands on the court, and in my mind, looking back at it, it felt like the entire school was watching. I was about to become champion. I had one more step to go. The lights dimmed. Like that's how it felt like in my mind, that I was on the cusp of greatness. And I completely embarrassed her. Like it was not even close. She didn't even get to touch the ball. I completely dominated. So I know why she was mad in hindsight, because I embarrassed this girl. And so everybody celebrated. They're like, Tuna, you won, a champion. You went around the world. Blah. Like everybody's cheering my name. And she breaks up my little celebration circle. And she says, well, yeah, of course you won. You're nothing but a N-word. And I heard of that word. I've heard it in my house and watching TV. I wasn't supposed to at that age. But I didn't really know what it meant. I didn't know the context. I knew I should have been mad, given the context of the situation, how she kind of came at me. And so everybody just looked at me like, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? And I think I just said something like, well, you still lost, Trick, get off my court, you know? And then just kept on celebrating with my friends. But I remember not being happy anymore. And I remember just going home and kind of talking to my parents about it eventually. And it just soured kind of everything. The second story I want to tell, transitioning a little bit, yes, I have my PhD. And so if you count from kindergarten to getting my PhD, that's 22 years, right? K through 12, 4 for undergrad, 2 more for my master's, 4 more for my PhD. It's a lot of damn school. So 22nd grade, 22 grades, right? 22 years, majority of my life has been in school in some way, shape, or form. Out of those 22 years, I've had 3 Black professors, 3 Black teachers out of 22 years. 4 if you include my kindergarten teacher, Miss Mitchell. And so if you want to include her, and I still remember, you know, she taught me how to draw a cat out of a heart. Like, so I remember that. But 3, 1 more in high school and 2 in undergrad, where I went to UC Santa Cruz. One was Dr. Trisha Rose, who wrote an amazing book on hip hop and society called Black Noise. And the other is the legendary Dr. Angela Davis. That's it. Those are the only Black teachers that I've had in my life, not in grad school and not getting my PhD. And in thinking about that, that pisses me off. That, I think, is deplorable. And that shows why representation matters so much across the board. From sports to politics to everything in academia, education, representation matters. Because what that showed me when I was thinking about it, subconsciously, I felt like I couldn't be a leader then because there were so few examples. And in bringing this parallel into sports a little bit, a lot of my friends ask me why I watch sports so much, why I wanted to study sports in my dissertation, like why do I, keep investing so much into this? And I'll tell you why, to connect everything. Outside of sports and entertainment, there is no other place I can go to see someone who looks like me succeed. Very, very few other spaces I look. Not much in office, in elected officials, not much in CEOs, venture capitalists, doctors, veterinarians, anything. I see so few Black men and women in positions of authority and power and leadership, unless it's in sports or entertainment. That's why representation matters. And that's why sports has to have everyone that's discussing things about how can we start creating incremental change and positive growth in society. You have to take a sincere look into sports because it will show you things that will lead to behavioral change that could be used to combat systemic racism. That shit matters to me. And that's why these conversations are happening. And that's what we're going to continue to talk about today and right now. But that's what I wanted to open up with. That's what I wanted to say, just to set some parallels, and that, hopefully I won't have to say anything much else. But so I do want to just turn it over to you guys, and I'm going to start asking some questions. But please, by all means, unmute yourselves if you want to respond and jump in to continue the conversation and make it totally fulfilling. And you can use the chat feature as well if you want. Raise your hand, do all those things. But so for the first part, I want to ask Sean. I want to go to you first. So for folks that might be unfamiliar with you and pro wrestling in that space, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how important representation is for you, not only in breaking into the scene, but also maybe growing up? Who were some of your idols and people that you looked up to?
Trying to put it a little, how do you say, the smaller version of everything, because when everybody get their turn. Grew up in Inglewood, California, and it's crazy because obviously being Black in Inglewood, of course, majority African American city, pro wrestling is your number one sport. Oh, you took some heat for it, And I was considered, it's crazy, growing up in the hood, you consider, oh, that's you a white boy, you different, being a Black kid, listening to rock music, pro wrestling, comic books. I caught heat. But it's funny, you always find those other kids that kind of match you, you know what I'm saying? And so, well, the one thing I'm proud of myself was, even through high school, like, I would get teased for, still got my, I grew up in the hood, so I still, know how to take care of myself, but I was always teased for being a little, that cultured, I guess, I'm sure you know what I'm saying? Everybody who has degrees in here, and brother, you've had to experience those couple of haters, you know what I'm saying? Hate that you educated, I see hate that you educated, hate you because, you know what I'm saying? If you grew up in the hood, you know what I'm saying? But like I said, we all know where we're at right now, so we stuck with our goals, you know what I'm saying? And like I said, a lot of cats that, used to make fun of me or tease or give me a hard time, they either in jail or they ain't here no more, you know what I'm saying? So I'm glad that my parents, everybody really pushed me to continue to be myself, Don't jump on trends, don't jump, obviously the gang culture too, all that. So who influenced me growing up, like I said, just of course I loved all the wrestlers, but of course it really held down to see African American wrestlers on TV. We gotta that really touched my heart. And the one guy who he gets a lot of slack today, there was a brother who I was like, okay, he is the one that I want to be wrestling.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a brother named Ahmed Johnson.
Oh, my dude.
Yes. A huge brother, like just slow master. He just snarled. And then I was like, okay, he's gonna be a bad guy, big old Black dude, the stereotypes we're gonna talk about. He came in and he slammed Yokozuna and he was the good guy. And I was like, dude, not only is this a big old slow brother who looks good, but he's gonna be a good guy. And I'm like, finally, why? Because most of the brothers we saw were, gangsters, tough guys, And I'm knocking that because I like some of the Bad News Brown and people like that too. But it was just really awesome to see, one of our own just be so dominant and be a main eventer. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, yeah. And of course, everybody came, the Rock, Nation Domination, all those people came after, but that was my first influence.
Yeah, because I think we're about the same age, and I remember like Ahmed Johnson and loving that as well, because it even calls me out on seeing the expectations that I had, right? I see him dark-skinned, bald, ripped, chiseled, swole dude coming down with nothing but some red tights and some red boots, and came in there and was the face. He was the good guy. And I expected him to be the bad guy, just on sight. So it's like, damn. And I'm calling myself out for that, right? And at the time, though, of course, I'm a child. I'm like 12, 13, 14 years old. But I was like, oh, I get to cheer him? Okay. And that's crazy. And, you know, and even like Nation of Domination, like you said, they had like Farouk, The Rock, D'Lo Brown, The Godfather, very militant take on Black Panthers in the squared circle, so to speak. And I still remember like the theme songs of that stuff. But it's amazing that the parallels now, and that's why I also just love the influence that pro wrestling can have as it kind of mirrors society, and the freedom that you have narratively to create these types of stories. It's just amazing looking back at it and seeing how much it tells the story of society and what's going on at the time. And it's amazing because, yeah, those stereotypes, those characters are often just exaggerated models of, you know, of real people.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, we have Angela Hills on now. I hear you typing.
She's having trouble hearing us.
Oh, okay.
Angela, can you hear us now? So keep on going. I will take this role. I'll tell her to try and get off and on. Okay.
But yeah, so those are great points, Sean, and thank you for bringing that up. And so I want to take it to you, Lou, because you've done amazing chronicles of Black manhood in terms of in athletics. So I want to know kind of what you're thinking and hearing about that within the professional wrestling space, but then also just bringing that into a general conversation about Black masculinity and representation.
Oh yeah, no. Just to piggyback on what you guys are saying, it's definitely. I mean, I used to be a wrestling fan, haven't watched in a while, but just watching. I grew up in the Junkyard Dog era, right, and so I still find myself trying to watch old videos. We actually at our library at Grand Valley State, we do have a Junkyard Dog book. I don't know if any students have checked it out. I might have been the only one to check it out, but I'm fascinated in it. And also I research a lot of Black newspapers. And so wrestling is a major sport, especially in the South, and just how it happens there, whether it's a women or men entering the ring. They draw a lot of huge crowds. And one of my favorite stories to tell is in New Orleans, actually, with black wrestling fans. And essentially what happens there is that the stadium, my dog just walked into a door, by the way, and I'll try to ignore a baby puppy here. But the stadium was segregated. And what happened was there was a white wrestler who came into the middle of New Orleans. And during one of the things, he looked up, let me shut the door because I got little kids. He looked up to the stands and he said something to the Black fans. And all the Black fans got upset and they threatened a boycott. And what happened next was the white promoter had to apologize, or else he would lose all his money. That's because there's so many Black fans were going to these events in the South, especially New Orleans, that they had Black wrestling fans had the power to change wrestling in New Orleans. Eventually Black fans would force integration to the stadiums, but that was one of the things you saw there. And I love reading about wrestling, used to watch wrestling. In the terms of boxing and Black manhood, it's the same type of stories you guys were telling where you know, a lot of times the Black box is depicted as bad, right? And so we have to think about what does it mean to be good, and what kind of characteristics make somebody good? Like who makes somebody bad like a Jack Johnson, and how do we get a good guy like a Peter Jackson or a Joe Louis? And I think the way that boxing is so popular, that's tends to be how we see Black people in general, right? You're good Black, you're bad Black. And I think that's the power of the narrative of sports in general, but boxing in specific. So there's ways I've seen people write about, you know, football and Cam Newton, right? And put them in that kind of dichotomy. Like, where does he fit in this Joe Louis, Jack Johnson dichotomy?
No, that's huge. Yeah, the Janica, I see you nodding like, yes. Like, what can you add on that and bringing it into Black feminism and Black female identity?
I want to thank you all for the platform for these stories. And I want to jump in by adding how I came to appreciate narratives of sport. I grew up in Augusta, Georgia. My father, Mac Bowman, integrated public schools in Thompson, Georgia, about 20 miles from Augusta. Went on to attend Virginia Military Institute on football scholarship. Was one of the first classes of Black student athletes, what he had to go through there, on behalf of, the American military. And he actually, went into the Army and went into medicine and has reflected on actually working and living near where he grew up with and on families who would not speak to him when he was sitting at a lunch table, in Thompson, Georgia. He actually read at lunch because people would not talk to him, would not engage him. And thinking about how fighting in the Army and football were very similar for him, very isolating, except for, when he was allowed to be parts of teams. And so that was kind of the sports culture that I came up in, both thinking about how sports can make you part of a team, but also keep you very isolated as an individual as part of that team. And so as an African-American literature professor, I think about, Invisible Man, this idea of a character having to physically fight for the right to be educated, for a scholarship, for fake money, right? And other incidents, I'm thinking of, Black Boy and Native Son, where sometimes the fights are physical and sometimes they're not, but when they're regulated in a particular area, even like we were talking about with Muhammad Ali, when they're sanctioned, you can fight. But when you prove success that might be a threat, that's taken away. And so, to bring it to Black feminism and Black women's writing, I think we have to look again to, where Black women are playing on that stage and how they're meeting a lot of the same, resistance. So thinking about, Don Imus calling Rutgers women's basketball team nappy-headed hoes, right? When you are proving to be successful, what's the backlash that comes against you? Serena Williams. I mean, we could think about body type, all of these things that once you're successful, the critiques come in the form of observations about appearance, and not necessarily, commendation of skill. And I've done some work on, Black women and health and wellness. And when Serena Williams said something is wrong with me, when she is pregnant, and there are these thoughts of, oh, Black women are supposed to be strong, supposed to be resilient. She shouldn't have had to tell them what tests to run on her body. And so all of these narratives just to say that the same conversations that are being had in society are being had in sports with men and also with women and also with trans and non-binary athletes. What are the things that are taken away in the name of sport that reflect on the same types of discrimination throughout society?
Yeah, I get. There's so much there that I want to point to and continue this conversation and open up a little bit. Nancy.
Yes, Angela, can you hear us?
Fix it.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We have our videos
Yay.
on. I'm so glad.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, turn yours on if you
Oh
can.
my gosh, I can't see anyone. Hello.
Well, you know what? We don't need to see you because we know you. You are Angela Hill, Overkill Hill, the professional strawweight MMA fighter, the first Black woman in the UFC, currently ranked 15th in her division. Just signed a contract yesterday. Feel free to break the news who your opponent is here, if you'd like. But Hill also received a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree at the Cooper Union School of Art, has worked in animation and done so much, is very vocal, and what I appreciate is authentic. And I'm gonna use a pun, doesn't pull punches. Tunisha,
Yeah.
would like to kind of continue this conversation with you.
Yes. I don't know how much you were able to hear before with the technical difficulties, Angela, but so far we've just been talking about various roles and identities that Black athletes play specifically across pro wrestling, boxing, historically, and MMA obviously as well. And I was drawing some parallels between the fact that sports is so important because there's not many other venues where I can go to see someone that looks like me succeed. And so I wanted to first kind of ask you about some of your role models that you might have had growing up. And did you have that type of representation of like you know, a strong Black woman, or who did you look up to in your decision making and becoming a professional fighter?
So it's kind of a weird one for me, because I started getting into fighting in my like mid-20s. So I didn't really grow up wanting to be an athlete. I was always athletically inclined, like I was always good at sports, but for whatever reason, I didn't like team sports. So I never really thought I'd be a fighter until I started getting into kickboxing and self-defense. And then I started looking to people like Layla Ali, like Miriam Nakamoto. She's a really good kickboxer who you know, I thought looked like me and was pretty badass. So representation was definitely important to me, because when I was coming up, in about when was it, about 2009 is when I first started getting into it. All the women who were doing MMA, who were doing kickboxing, they're all pretty much like not Black. Like I didn't see too many girls who looked like me doing it. So it did make me a little nervous getting into it, but because I was so into it, I didn't really put too much weight onto it. Like I would ask my friends and family, like, is this silly that I'm putting so much effort into this thing that doesn't really seem like it will become anything, that it will make me money or anything like that. But I mean, coming from art school, it was kind of like, okay, go from one profession that probably won't make you any money to another one. So yeah, I think really my biggest motivation coming up was my mom, just because she always went against the grain. She never made me feel weird for doing things that weren't necessarily like known for being lucrative. Like she didn't force me to do things that just because she thought, okay, you're not going to make any money on this, or it's a pipe dream to try to become a famous artist or try to become a professional fighter. She always allowed me to kind of follow my dreams. And I think that's something that a lot of people in the Black community don't get, because it's kind of a luxury, it's one of those things that you can do if you have family that has like a little bit of bankroll to help you get through college, to help you kind of find your way, get off your feet. But a lot of people, they grow up taking care of their families. When you don't have that history of family having money and passing it down generation to generation. So I think that's when you talk about privilege, I think that's definitely a privileged thing. Being able to, I guess, be more loose with your choices as a kid of what you want to be when you grow up, what you want to do. Do you want to follow like something more creative? Do you want to follow something that's not as likely to succeed, but maybe you're passionate about it. So maybe, you get the chance to at least try it out and see what happens. I think that's definitely a luxury that a lot of people who are forced to grow up pretty young don't get to do. So yeah, I'd say like my mom is probably my biggest influence when it comes to just taking chances and doing things that are a little out of the norm.
Mm-hmm. And there's the words you use, luxury and privilege, stuck out to me, and Janica as well, because the luxury, right? Everyone assumes that this is just everyone is just throwing money at you. It's, everything fast pass, like you've got it good, right? So when the time to, like right now, the activism and the uprisings, we put so much more responsibility on athletes now, and some see that as a calling, like, yes, I will do this, and as a LeBron James, right? And while others were like, nah, Republicans buy sneakers too, like a Jordan, right? And didn't want to do anything. And so it's, and I'm curious, Janica, please jump in here too if you want. Speaking to, Angela, do you feel like you have a responsibility? And I ask because in the first line of your bio, it says first Black female in the UFC. And because I can say, man, that matters to me because even I tweeted it out before, like when this quarantine happened and stuff, and it's like, and I took my afro out, I was like, oh shit, I'm a light heavyweight Angela Hill, right? Like that mattered to me.
And when is it welcome and when is it not too? When is your voice kept in place and when do people want to hear what you have to say?
No, exactly. So do you feel like you have a responsibility at all, Angela, in this landscape? And how comfortable are you kind of speaking out about everything that's going on right now?
It's definitely mixed feelings. And I think a lot of people are feeling that way. When you do put, I guess, your popularity on the line, because in MMA, it's mostly like white males between the ages of 18 and 30 something or whatever. That's the fan base. So when you put your popularity on the line and speak out about something that means a lot to you, it's a bit scary, like the backlash that you get. So it's kind of funny, like throughout my career, if I've spoken out about something, that'll usually be the thing that gets me on people's radar to the point where they think I'm doing it for publicity, when really I'm doing it because I feel like I have a moral obligation just to say, hey, this is wrong. And you see a lot of fighters in the MMA community, they get so sick of dealing with the overwhelming amount of backlash for saying something that in my family is, or in my community and my family is common sense. It's really ridiculous sometimes having to state the obvious. So I think with this, it's almost a relief that everyone's on the same page. It's maybe the first time since I've been aware of what's going on, as an adult. I think it's maybe the first time that everyone's on the same page. And yeah, you still get a little bit of backlash, but it's almost like activism is trending. So that's kind of where my mixed feelings go, because I feel like even the people who were shouting me down, like even a couple months ago, now they're either silenced because they don't want to take the heat of people actually speaking out now, or they're giving lip service to the movement because it's trending. So I think a lot of my mixed feelings come with that, like a lot of disingenuous kind of activism going on right now, and I don't want to make it out as if I'm not happy about the fact that there's a lot of people speaking out about social injustice and there's a lot of changes being made. I think I'm just surprised at how quickly a lot of I guess companies and I guess it seems like a PR move with a lot of people that they're all just saying, oh yeah, we agree, when literally a couple weeks ago that didn't seem like the case. So I definitely feel an obligation to say something, to speak out, and I'm happy that now when I speak out, I don't have to turn off my comment section or block 50 people just because they don't agree with me and they respond angrily when they don't agree. So yeah, I don't know. It's definitely something that's put me, I don't know. Is it like everything that's going on right now? I think a lot of people feel a bit on edge, and just tired and, maybe even overwhelmed by the amount of videos online and the amount of violence we're seeing, and yeah, there's just a lot going on. So it's actually been pretty hard for me to unpack. Like I really just tuned in to kind of be a student and hear what you guys had to say about everything going on. But just a raw a raw opinion of mine is just that there's a lot going on right now, and I'm very happy about the changes being made. But it's also a drastic change to what we've seen up until George Floyd's death.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I answered your question.
Absolutely, because it is a lot to unpack, and I'm exhausted.
Yeah, we all are.
Yeah,
I feel like I've been in fight camp.
Right, like it's an exhausting process, and like you said, every time I open up the phone and scroll through, it's another one and another one.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I have seen some comfort though, or felt comforted in that I'm seeing a lot of athletes and public figures, period, saying, hey, if you unfollow me, good, because I don't want a bigot following me, no way, right? Like this is clean wheelhouse, right, of a lot of the fakeness and followers, like, because there's that good in, yes, please be honest, because I want to know up front, like, do I need, like, who you are, what do you represent, you know what I mean? So some people are enjoy seeing that kind of clearinghouse because they don't want to be affiliated with someone that, doesn't believe in civil liberties and rights. So but I understand that mixed, the mixed reaction and emotion, because yeah, it can affect your pocket, and then also it's, then you're opening up that backlash as well. So, but Sean, I want to ask you too, in the professional wrestling space, and I've seen, in the mainstream, we've seen WWE, we've seen New Day, Biggie and Xavier Woods taking the knee, raising the fist. We're seeing, that's another mixed bag too, because we know that the McMahons are some of the Trump biggest supporters and investors and contributors, but then they also have a talent roster that believes in this stuff. And we've seen even, folks like Randy Orton, third generation, who has come around and has expressed his own personal growth of how he was anti-Kaepernick and anti, taking a knee, but now has taken, obviously, the last 4 years or so since the Kaepernick stuff to get educated and listen to these types of stories from his peers and turning a new leaf and now being in support of Black Lives Matter. But so Sean, I want to ask, kind of like in the wrestling space, how have you kind of, what are your thoughts on kind of like how that's being represented, and if you've seen any type of Black leadership in the past in the locker room space?
Man, it's funny you gave the question, but you was hitting some great points. So I was like, dang, how do I? you was giving the question and just giving it. I was like, that's good. I was like, she's saying what I want to say. I really think this situation, how you say, because you did so good. That's why I'm like, African American, the leadership in the locker room.
Yeah, like how
I will say this. I've seen a lot of people, especially the Trayvon Martin. It was okay. I'm gonna talk from with my perspective. I really represent. I was really few were. But I think this situation, the George Floyd, really opened so many people's eyes. Trayvon was the for those, like I say, who weren't educated, those didn't know, even younger, like I said, because I'm 35, and there's African American wrestlers coming out at like 18, 19, 17 now and younger. And so I really don't, like I said, think a lot of them knew or understood how strong the civil rights movement things were, say grew up, like I said, coming from, 84, 80s baby. Still had some grandparents who were, in the mix. My family from Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas. So I had relatives who were in history, who got stories, who were in the marches, who were spit on, who fought, who had their relatives lynched. You know what I'm saying? I think with the younger bracket of who's coming in, and due to a lot of younger parents, a lot of the younger ones didn't know too much history. You know how, everybody's story is different, but I didn't see too many really rally. I mean, they thought it was cool. Some people put the hoodies on or knew a little bit. But once again, you hit a point. You said what Randy Orton did. It's the education and the growth. And so a lot of guys who I didn't see speak up around the earlier police brutality things have really turned up now.
That's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge, and an important point that you bring up, because I've noticed too, even scrolling through my timeline and seeing other wrestlers, professional or indie, and white ones too, and white and Hispanic and everything, that are posting such emotional videos, right? And about how they are embarrassed to be white even right now because of how they're affiliated. Like, there's a lot of white guilt, and then you compound that with gender stereotypes of masculinity, and I'm not supposed to be emotional, I can't cry, like blah, blah, like all of these things. So I've been seeing so much from wrestlers commenting on this space, and that's why I just love that we're able to bring this in, and per your point, getting re-educated, because the younger generations did not know. Like, until LeBron and Dwayne Wade, everybody put on that hoodie for Trayvon Martin, until like the I Can't Breathe shirts, Eric Garner, like all of this stuff. It's just showing that the next generation needs to re-educate or educate themselves, period, because we can't rely on the traditional education system to do it for them. But I know Nancy, go ahead, Sean.
I'll say, lastly, like a brief story, I'm gonna speed it up because, like I said, one part of my career, I was in a tag team. It's called Black Justice, and it was based out of Orange County. The promoter wanted us to be tough guys, bad guys, and semi like the nation, a little bit of the nation, but we, like I said, I've always been a face. Face, for those who don't know, is a good guy. And so I do a little stand-up comedy stuff. So I like, instead of being a threatening bad guy, we would crack on the crowd, all that. But they would put us against babyface white teams, like, you know what I'm saying? And we would beat the crap out of them. That was what we were supposed to do. Now, while I'm doing it, you know what I'm saying, I'm getting paid, it's cool, but you really see how people feel.
Yeah.
Because some of those boos, like I said, some of the stuff we did, and we beat people down after their matches, and we get the general boo, but we would get some straight up looks and hatred. Like, remember, this is Orange County. Yeah. So deep down, what people were really, really, really wanting to say, and that point on, in independent wrestling, we have a lot of creativity. That team kind of like but I eventually told the promoter, you know what? There's little white kids and things around, and this black, Latino kids, everything. And at the time, we were the only two black people on the show. And I was like, I'm not going to do this anymore, because this is probably going to be some of these kids' first representations of what they see. He was like, no, it's going to be good. And I was like, I can't. So my heart, and like I said, I can't. And sure enough, when I became the face again, the good guy, you can see some of the kids that were booing me, like, oh, they come give me a hug. They were like scared. They're like, come here, and then eventually, and it's little seeds like that that can grow. And, sometimes, like I say, in wrestling, pro wrestling, we've had tons of stereotypes throughout time.
Oh, absolutely.
So, oh my goodness, countless. And like I said, it's just little steps like that, individual steps like that. And, like I said, with the New Day, like you said, and all that, it's cool to be funny. It's cool to be the team that entertains and all that. But I'm glad WWE and various organizations I've worked for are allowing us to say, we have issues, we have some, I'm black, we have some social issues going on, and we're going to represent us positivity in this time. No more, like I said, when I first came in, they wanted, do rags, hat backwards, and so many promoters. It's terrible. I mean, we can do a whole nother podcast. But like I said, I'm glad I'm able to control my representation to African American people and to the world. You know what I'm saying?
That's good, and I hope, especially now, I think more promoters are allowing that because they're seeing exactly what you said, that this can be the first time, a young white kid in Orange County or Huntington Beach can see a Black wrestler. The impact, the stain that leaves on the imprint, literally on their mind, we know can be long-term and used for good or bad. But Nancy, I know you wanted to bring the conversation to a little bit more.
Well, I would love to unpack the history, and I'm looking, I guess, with Janica and Lewis. Lewis, you've written about the Black boxers from 1890 to 1910. Because I think a lot of us may feel that Jack Johnson is their first knowledge of a Black champion, and we know that there were many who came before. And when I bring this up, and Janica, we talked about reframing narratives. Why do we not talk about Jack Johnson enough? And is this part of this white guilt that we feel shamed about such a time, that history becomes more palatable because we just don't talk about it?
So that's a great question. Why not Jack Johnson? Just to be clear, he was pardoned, right? And we have to talk about that. Last year or 2 years ago? And when I say pardon, he was convicted of the Mann Act. So the Mann Act comes out in 1910, which is essentially what they would call the white slavery or anti-white slavery law, which barred not prostitution, but transportation of women across state lines for immoral purposes. So if it wasn't your wife or something, and Johnson was notorious for dating not only white women but white prostitutes, and so the federal government comes after for that, and we finally, as a nation, 100+ years later, apologize for that. But we're also coming up in a couple weeks on the, if I get my math correct, the 110th anniversary of some of the largest race riots in our country, let's be clear, the largest day of race rioting in our country. And that was July 4th, 1910, when Jack Johnson beat Jim Jeffries, right? So there's more than at least 20 Black people are killed. One lady has her tongue shot out for cheering for Jack Johnson. They tried to lynch somebody in New York. And so this happened all over the place. I have a story map that maps these out. It's online. If you go to Jack Johnson, Jim Jeffries, and put in Knights story map, Knights with a K, you'll be able to go from the various places where these riots were. But to talk about Jack Johnson is to talk about that history, right? On the one hand, it's about lynching. It's a history of miscegenation. It's also a history about the fear of the Great Migration, right? What happens when Black folks leave the South? What happens when Black people decide to be their own folks, to be their own person, right? And Jack Johnson would famously say, "I'm not a slave, right? I'll do what I want to do." And that scared a lot of white Americans. And as we come up on Juneteenth tomorrow, right, having to have these real talks about history, whether it's a history of Jack Johnson or one good story is after he wins the heavyweight championship, the mayor of Memphis bars Black people from fighting in the city. And he essentially says, we need you to work in the cotton fields, right? We're not dealing with any more fighters or any more challenges to our supposed racial superiority. We're putting you back to work. To tell that history tells a history of America that many people are uncomfortable with. So tomorrow, when we talk about Juneteenth, we talk about the history of Emancipation Days or Jubilee Days, or whatever these celebrations are, reclaiming public spaces. I think that's part of that narrative. Like, what type of history do we tell ourselves, and why? And how can that push us forward? So I think a history about a Jack Johnson or Joe Gans or Peter Jackson, these are earlier Black champions, help us get somewhere where, let's say, a lost cause history doesn't get us.
I want to hop in there too. I appreciate that. I literally can see the Charlotte Motor Speedway in my backyard. And so, with Bubba Wallace saying, okay, that's enough. And then, NASCAR responding, or, growing up near the Masters and how the narrative changed, when Tiger Woods came in the picture. These weren't new conversations. They were suppressed conversations. In Charlotte, where the Panthers took the Jerry Richardson statue down before anyone could come for it. And just these ideas of like how we can shape the histories once we finally listen. Just two pieces. I write about Black children in play, and specifically Black girls in play. And in the Frederick Douglass narrative, where he talks about how enslaved people were made to play before New Year's Day, because then they would be sent to new plantations. And so thinking about being like set out to play, being forced to play, knowing their freedom would be taken away. Or Booker T. Washington writing about how he never had much use for games. So thinking about, the background of enslavement and like what being made to play looked like. And so, even as we think through Jack Johnson, through, 20th and 21st century narratives, what does it look like when Black athletes are taking the freedom to play out of the hands of, those who are fixing them in certain places. So that's my response to how the history is complex. It's freedom, but also not freedom at the same time. What happens when you step outside those bounds? And what does history then tell about your narrative once you stop the control of your body, or resist the control of your body in particular ways?
It makes me think of so many things when you talk about like the freedom and lack thereof, and choosing to participate in it, because in some of the research that I've done on like developmental basis of behavior, right? When looking at youths and getting into sports, predominantly in Black communities, it's athletics over academics. It's looked at as the only way out, right? You've got kids that feel like they need to get that basketball scholarship. They need to go pro. They need to make that money because they need to support their families, like Angela was saying earlier. And so school, academics, all that stuff like is kind of backseat, or even in the trunk if it even gets to sit in the car, right? Because they feel there's that pressure. There's no freedom to be able to study zoology or whatever the hell else you might have an interest in, right? You have to focus on sports as a way out, right? And the assumptions as well, then it's like, oh, well, of course, just like the first time I got called the N-word, it was sports related. Granted, it was tetherball, which is underrated, by the way, in a whole nother conversation. But like, still, she thought that I won only because I had an advantage of being Black at 9. And I bring that up again because even now, so many people are contacting me, and I'm sure everybody else, about like, what can I do? How do I help? Like starting these conversations and talking about kids, about racism. And so many people, when I tell them to like, Ed, talk to your kids about it, they say, no, they're too young. No, they're not. Because I had to learn what being called an N-word was at 9. And that means I know that 6th grader who called me that, who I'm sure still sucks at tetherball, knew what it was. And it wasn't her first time saying it either. So it's not too young to talk about it. And we can't, in studying media psychology and the relationship between those two, we can't all of a sudden just rely on media to make a documentary or a cartoon about it and just hand it off to your kid and be like, hey, go, don't suck. We can't do that. We have to take the responsibility of sitting down and having these conversations about it, and all of the stereotypes that are bulleted underneath in terms of identity as well. And so I'm fascinated. I want to talk a little bit more about like the Black women identity in sports, because in talking about representation and how we're depicted in media, I say we like I've done anything. But Janica, you brought this up too about like Serena Williams and stuff. Like I didn't watch a lick of tennis before I saw Serena and Venus with the beads in their hair. That was the first time. And I was like, oh snap. Like I wanted to be her, right? I still do. That was the first time I watched tennis. And seriously, still probably the only time since. And now just seeing the amount of women and tennis players specifically that have come up citing them as their idols, like Coco Gauff. But you brought up too, the way that we look at Serena's body and the way that the media has always talked about her body is like, it's too masculine. She's like a female Mike Tyson because she's ripped. Like look at her ass, like just the conversations that people have about it that we don't get, and that isn't attributed to any other caricature, because we can't, like we talked about in the Ali panel, we can't be characters within our own story. right? I think Morgan was talking about that in his piece. Like, we are more just props to be marveled at. So I'm curious to hear, and open it up about what you guys' thoughts are kind of on that, and the freedom to just be yourself. And I'm curious too, Angela, if you're comfortable on speaking on it, if like you felt any type of way about shifting back and forth. Like, have you ever felt like your body was being depicted in a certain way that you didn't like? Or if you felt in a situation where, okay, I can't be too black, right? That's always a thing that we talk about. We can't be, we can't be too nice. We can't be too mean. We can't be too pretty. We can't be too, so I'd love you to hear your thoughts on kind of like that double dutch, or if you've ever felt like you've had to be consciously aware of what you're doing and what you're wearing.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, good. I had to plug my phone in. I feel like I wasn't super worried about the way I looked until I got in the UFC. And it was kind of a weird way that it happened when I went on The Ultimate Fighter, which is like their TV show that they have. They always take your phones away. They take away any communication with the outside world. So I basically went in there like nobody knew who I was. And then I came out with like, people knowing my name, knowing what I looked like, just knowing about me. So it was like kind of like a 7-week period where I was in the dark. So this is when the ice bucket challenge was going on. Everyone was doing the ice bucket challenge. So I like, when we did it, I was still like, we still had our phones away. We didn't really see any of that stuff until like 2 weeks afterwards. So when I did it, I had my hair all poofed out. I was like thinking I looked good. And we did the ice bucket challenge. We all threw the ice bucket on somebody. And it was the first reveal of the cast of The Ultimate Fighter. So one of the first comments, and this is YouTube, so granted, yeah, whatever. But one of the first comments on the YouTube video was, I hope the black one doesn't win. And it wasn't just the fact that someone wrote that, but it was the fact that it was the highest, it had the most likes of all the comments on the video. And I think whoever posted, like the UFC, it was like the official UFC like YouTube channel. So I think they deleted it soon after they saw it. But it just gutted me, And it was the first time I was kind of exposed to that fan base. So already I started off with this bitter taste in my mouth, that people were against me. People didn't want to see me succeed. And a lot of times I use it as fuel, but at the same time, I'm not a person who likes having enemies. I try to be friendly to everyone I meet. I'm always, I always try to be approachable. And it's not because I'm afraid that they're going to think I'm angry, but it's just the way I was brought up. And I feel like I wasn't really given a chance with a lot of people just because of the way I look. So that's always been a thing that I've been aware of since then, is that when I go out there, when I fight or whatever, people are going to see me as this beast, this angry person, or just this person who they don't want to see succeed. And it's always been in the back of my head. And another kind of experience like that, when they did the big media push for The Ultimate Fighter, it was the first season with all women. So their big media push was beauty and strength. Like, they're like, beautiful, beauty, strength. And I kept waiting to see my face under the beauty one. It didn't happen. It was always the strength one. I was just like, come on, guys, throw me a bone. Even if you don't think I'm cute, just do it anyway. But it was something that I would joke about. But it's still this kind of subconscious thing where it's like, okay, we have to put this person with beauty and this person with strength, and it's all like marketing and this and that. And marketing usually goes for the lowest hanging fruit, like what will most people be able to relate to the most. And that's why you hear stories like or you see things like the pro wrestling story where they're like, okay, you're gonna play this stereotype and you're gonna play it hard, and even if it's not you, they still say shut up and do it, and then you do it, and people react because it's kind of it's built off of the stereotypes that we're used to, that we're comfortable with. So yeah, I think being brought into the limelight of like all America, because I grew up in PG County, it's like affluent, like a black suburb. Then I moved to New York City. I've never been in, I guess, middle America, like white America. I felt like I was never really exposed to that until I became a minor celebrity, and then suddenly I'm like, oh shit, like like this is what people are like, you know? So it was kind of a rude awakening for me, because I've always been around people who either look like myself or people who have been exposed to every other race, and they had like a good understanding of, you know, the fact that people are just people. So it was weird for me to be suddenly thrust into that kind of demographic, where you're being exposed to a lot of people who don't have any black friends or only have one black friend, and they always pull them out when they say something racist, you know, or you know, try to prove that they're not being racist. But yeah, it was definitely different for me, and it took some getting used to, and I had to learn how to ignore it and how to block people. And yeah, I still think people are surprised when they hear that I have a voice, they hear that I can put a sentence together, you know. I still think people think that it's an act. I've been called Steve Urkel before, or I've been called I don't know, just people are just surprised that I do have an education and that I can say big words. And it can be frustrating, but at the same time, I like proving people wrong. So I think as a Black woman, a lot of times you're brought up as a kid learning to take pain and turn it into strength. And it's something that we're expected to do. And it's hard. It's really hard. So I like that people are talking about it now, because, you know, we're all just human and we all have breaking points, and sometimes it can be too hard. And then when it is too hard, you're seen as weak. And it's not that you're weak, it's just that you're human. So I think a lot of the expectations that come with being a Black woman, being an athlete, being a Black athlete, a lot of those are hard to live up to, but the ones that succeed, they're able to, I don't know, just kind of suck it up and do it.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot. It's a lot there. I'm glad, and thank you for sharing too, because I think you hit the nail on the head, like that. It's about sharing these experiences, because you probably don't know that you've had to feel that, and that you've had to suppress that, and that it's a conscious thing that we have to grow up with taking pain and turning it into strength. That's something that's going to be, you know, to the experience for a lot of other people, right? Like that's new to them. And so I think now more than ever, this is why, at least this is such a pivotal part of history, because people are getting exposed to that now. And they're learning that this has been the case for so long. And we've had to suppress our feelings about that stuff, because for a number of different reasons why we couldn't say something. So it's pivotal and it's huge. But I do want to open it up too, like Julie, Josh, if anybody else has, you know, a comment or a question, please, by all means, this is a roundtable. But Nancy, I know you had something else too that you wanted to add and bring up into this in regards to identity or some of Lou's points.
I mean, there's so much I want to unpack here. And you guys both can kind of talking about this stereotype, and you know, that and also what we're doing with the role of a Black athlete right now, and this idea of representing, but it's that responsibility that is too much on your shoulders.
Mm-hmm. I think too is the responsibility part. Lou, I want to ask kind of what your perspective was on that in terms of like looking at the history and if you're seeing like any parallels in the current landscape about because even I know you were talking about as well, like it comes back to the freedom conversation that Janica brought up, in that prize fighters back in the day quite literally had to fight for their middle class rights as well to even conform into like this American ideology, right? And how Black activism, what that looked like in not only boxing history, but now we're seeing it across the NBA and even some of the internal conflicts that are happening right there, right? Like you've got Kyrie Irving and Dwight Howard like, no, we can't play because we don't want to be a distraction from the protest. And it's like, well, none of this is new. So where were you in January, right? So there's a lot of inner group conflict that is taking away even from the bigger picture as well. Because if we're bitching amongst ourselves, like how can we be in unison as a collective too? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on kind of pinning that together from historical to current across sports period.
Right. I think a great example, since we're talking combat sports, is a couple great examples. One is just how that athlete can shift into, let's say, an activist. And I like to use Floyd Patterson as this example. So if you don't know Floyd Patterson, until Mike Tyson beat his record, he's the youngest heavyweight champion ever. And got a lot of flack from the Black community on the one hand, because he didn't fight anybody, right, in the late 50s and always ducked Sonny Liston. But Floyd Patterson got involved in the civil rights movement, and it's one of those stories where he said he was just watching TV, right, and he was young kids, and this might help us explain why it grows so fast, right? He saw the young kids during the sit-in movement and all the violence that was happening to them, and he's thinking to himself, here I am, the heavyweight champion of the world, and I'm here doing nothing. What can I do, right? If they have the courage and I don't, like, how can I help? And I think I like using that example, because what happens is when more people get involved, others feel comfortable doing it, right? It's a lot harder when you're that lone figure, when you're that isolated Jackie Robinson, whether in sports or an activist, because people can attack you. But when there's a whole movement around you and you get involved, now you're part of the movement. And so Floyd went from soft participation in that moment. So he bought himself a lifetime membership for the NAACP, to really participating. And so for one of his championship fights in Miami, he integrates the arena in Miami, essentially puts it in his contract that if the stadium is segregated, then that promoter will owe $10,000 to the NAACP. Because of that, they integrate the stadium. Essentially, Miami arenas become integrated, and he then gives money to the NAACP himself. The next year, he's in Mississippi with Jackie Robinson and Kurt Flood talking to protesters. And then in 1963, he goes to Birmingham with Jackie Robinson. After there was some rebellions in Birmingham. So after the kids are the water hoses are brought out on the kids, there's a motel that's dynamited, and this sparks a rebellion in the streets. And then Jackie Robinson and Floyd Patterson come there. The next year, he's working with Jackie Robinson to expand housing for Black folks, right? Suburban housing. So just within 4 years, he goes from doing literally nothing to being part of this movement. And part of that is because he sees others getting involved. Another great example of how people can change, right, is this. I don't know if you guys see the shirt that I'm wearing. It's Martin Luther King and Muhammad Ali, right? 64, MLK comes out publicly against Muhammad Ali, wouldn't call him Muhammad Ali, called him Cassius Clay, and said, look, as a fighter, he's fine. So after he wins the heavyweight championship, and then he announces himself as a member of the Nation of Islam. But when it comes to politics, he just needs to be quiet. So essentially a shut up and play. 3 years later, right, he's siding with Muhammad Ali over the Vietnam War. And you get stuff like this, right, where all of a sudden, right, an athlete who used their platform to talk about what's going on in America got someone like a Martin Luther King to see what was going on in America. And I think that's that important history that we missed. And that's why athletes getting involved is so important. As Sean says, maybe it's just little things like people seeing him. But then it's that next step of not only just seeing you, right? And so athletes like Willie Mays or Althea Gibson would say, this is important for people to see me in this light. Then the next step is actually having them see you do something. And I think that's the power that athletes have. And when they don't do something, we remember it. So last point, and then I'll pass it on. 68 Olympics. We all remember John Carlson, Tommy Smith, and yes, I have a story map. I'll post for that too in the chat session. And who we don't remember is the person who boycotted, and that's Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And I think to this day, he reflects on that, right? He lost his platform by taking himself out of it. And I bring that up to talk about these players. Now, I don't think the NBA players should play because I don't think it's healthy. I don't think the NBA players should play because I think owners are treated like a circus, right? They're caged animals in this respect. But I do think if they decide to play, I think this is where they have an opportunity to use their platform, because now all eyes are on them and they can have a bigger impact, right? Kareem stayed away. He has no impact in 68 to say what he has to say. I think Kyrie, if he has something to say, Dwight Howard, if he has something to say, this is this big platform to do it in this COVID bubble in Orlando, which I actually don't think they should be there because it's dangerous. But if they do decide to go, this is an opportunity for them to use their platform.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. And thank you for bringing in the parallels.
Tunisha? I'm
Yeah.
sorry, could I ask a question? I'm sorry to cut you off, but I was wondering if I could ask a question. I was just curious what people thought about something you and I talked about, Tunisha, a little bit. It seems like a lot of the issues that are going on right now, social justice issues related to George Floyd, are kind of dovetailing, interestingly, on the topic that we're talking about with increasing rights for college athletes. And what we saw at OSU over this last week, and Tunisha, you were telling me about what was going on at USC.
Yeah.
I was just curious what people thought about that, because that seems like, I mean, I don't know too much about college sports, but I've always sensed that there's a real, I mean, maybe even more than professional sports, a lot of times almost like a plantation mentality. And to see unpaid athletes first fighting to get paid when they're bringing all this money into colleges, and then now speaking out and daring to speak out against coaches, seems like a very interesting dovetailing of situations. And I was wondering what people thought about that.
I can jump in quickly. I've worked in college athletics, married a former student athlete, but thinking about how NCAA and other regulatory boards also can serve to enforce certain types of behavior, and also how students on all platforms are speaking back and pushing back against that. So, thinking about, what does it mean if I lose a scholarship, and that might be worth it, but coming to the understanding that that money is being controlled. We know now how much institutions are making. And so I think thinking of how protest is happening on college campuses too is pushing back against that idea that they don't know how they're part of systems.
No, you're right. And the analogy you brought up, Josh, about like the plantationist system. I mean, William Roden wrote that amazing book about $40 million slaves, and looking at the NCAA specifically as being just a revised plantationist system, taking advantage of young Black athletes, because these are the predominant sports, football, basketball, where 90%, are Black kids, and taking advantage of them. So yeah, this has been a huge pivotal moment, just I think across, because we saw just, what was it, a couple of months ago, name, image, and likeness now being afforded to professional or to college athletes, and to NASCAR removing the Confederate flag. Like, these are huge milestones, and I'm curious too, specifically about just college sports and that platform of the NCAA, like how much of this is going to change in the future of like how we think and structure these identities of young athletes, because we know it's bull. We know they're not like the student part. I mean, there's so many different stories about, not having to take classes. We know they get the perks, right? Like, we've all kind of seen those types of stories and things, but I think now more than ever, and because of social media and the young kids now are growing up with this, that they know that they have a voice now, and there's opportunities to not only share that, but now make money off of it as well. So
Or
it's
having to do all of the same things that other students are doing in classrooms and then still being told you are not equal to other students on your campuses.
at the
So
same.
those two pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Nice. Please go ahead, Sean.
I I didn't get it how you say it, the university, but I used to, it's in a community college, I won't say the name, in the hood. And I really am glad that it is, and I've seen it personally because, like I said, I was able to work on the college campus and be a student. It's bottom line, it's terrible. I've seen literally the star couple times, the star athlete make the play of the game, make the, you know, I'll have the college looking at everything. I've seen them from my own perspective and my own eyes right after the games outside on the street selling dope. Because they don't have, there's literally on college campus, there's people walking around hungry. And I'm not talking about like, oh, I'm missing a couple dollars. I'm talking about you have some food, like, hey, I don't know where my next meal is coming from. You know what I'm saying? My mom didn't get her check. Financial aid didn't come through. Various stories, but these cats is trying to survive, you know what I'm saying? And please, you know, everybody who has a platform, can we please stand up for these athletes? Not so much just for the universities. There's a lot of money in the community college system that comes through too, you know what I'm saying? And like I said, I'm getting emotional because, like I said, I said a couple of times, like, you know, people, we ask each other, loan me some money, you know, all that. But when I was in college, people was like, hey, you know, a place where I can get something to eat. That's horrible. And the fact that it's in the United States of America, that's horrible. That's unacceptable. So,
No, you're absolutely
everybody, you have a platform, please push that, because like I said, I think on the surface, you know, we hear about, oh, you know, the money's not getting kicked in, but when you see people going through it, you know what I'm saying? When you see people actually going through, do I have money to put gas in my car, or do I have to eat? Do I have to balance that? The balance keep my lights on? Or I even heard this story. I've heard, sorry, getting choked up. I knew a student who used to wait so everybody can leave so he can sleep in the locker room overnight because he didn't have a place to stay. Those are the stories that the news don't catch. You know, literally have to sneak back in to spend overnight, you know, spend a night.
Mm-hmm.
That's unacceptable, y'all. That's unacceptable. Star athlete, very unacceptable. So you can't spread stories like those, you know, because like I said, those aren't the ones that really catch the news and all that. You know, a lot of times our people, we have a lot of pride, you know what I'm saying? Because we got to keep up with the Joneses, you know what I'm saying? And all that. But yeah, stories like that come later. So
no, thank you for sharing. It's huge. Go ahead, Nancy.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, you know, I think we do need to shed more light into this, in that universities make a lot of money off of these athletes. And the fact that you have some that, as we've been talking about, athletics, music, film, or arts, as sometimes the only way out, sometimes, you know, either academics somehow or athletics. And the fact that they get money from this athlete. And I think this is one reason that, you know, schools are pushing for football so that they can, I mean, I don't know if they can ever fill a stadium. I hope to God not. But they can have it on TV. And yet students are not even given the consideration, as you talk about, of even, you know, obviously they're not paid, which I think we need to think about that. But and maybe this, Sean, or and also maybe Louis, you could bring up these institutionalized narratives. Like, we all know that student athletes are financially important to universities and they make money off of them. Why don't we understand this and give them some money or make them more empowered?
I think too, before I want to bring up it, even the representation part. And it's kind of what I opened up with about me only having 3 Black teachers out of 22 years of me being in school. It's because there's not anyone of color even in the athletic departments, in the university president's office. Because if there was someone with authority sitting at the table where decisions are made, this shit wouldn't be happening. That's the stories that Sean just shared should not be happening. But it's my opinion, probably, that those that are at that table that are making the dollars and figuring out like, okay, this booster and this donation, they've never had to experience what we're talking about right now. And that's my gut hunch anyway, about, because representation needs to be across the board, not just like on the field, figuratively, literally, right? And what Josh was bringing up earlier is that there was USC, there's now like a new organization with Black student athletes and allies, USBAA, I think it was called, where they're at least now talking to their athletic director about actual diversity and inclusion, about making sure that there are people in the athletic department office that are Black, that can speak about the Black experience, what this means, from the university president's office all the way down, so that these types of things can start to be discussed, and you can do that self-audit and look at, all right, this is screwed up, this is the way it's been, not any longer, we need to make those decisions. But yes, please, anybody, what else are on people's minds, or Janica, or Lou, Julie?
For me, the movement from diversity and inclusion to equity and justice are important, and that includes, student athletes to this idea of not taking without investing and telling them, oh, your education is the prize, but what are they earning on the backs of what? And so these conversations are being had across society. My other question, to get back to Black feminism, is who is protecting Black women who are told that, you're resilient and you are strong, to Angela's point, strong, but not, XYZ. And so this idea of how Black bodies continue to be vulnerable because they're not listened to, or it's thought, oh, you should endure, you should be able to, feel pain, you should be able to take all of this in and not be sick and not fight back and not, say what you need. And so just a reminder that these conversations aren't in isolation. They're all through all social platforms.
Well said. Louis, what are you thinking about for this content?
I was just gonna say, in regards to paying the players, obviously if you follow me on Twitter, I'm all for it. And I think part of it, why we don't have pay for college players, is just the way it's set up, right? It was at first this belief in amateurism, right? And amateurism is a very top-down belief, right? Because in order to be an amateur or play sports for the love of sports or sake, right, is you got to have money to do that. And as soon as working class folks got involved in sports in the 1800s, late 1800s, they're getting involved for money, right? And so you'll start to see that shift in the 1880s, in the early 1900s, of working class folks going to these elite Ivy League schools, and they're white, and the mentality is, well, this is good enough for you, right? This idea that we let you into this institution is good enough for you. Once we get to post World War II and the Civil Rights Movement, and all of a sudden those college teams start to look, you don't have that one or two Black player on the team. Now you have majority Black players. That idea that should be good enough for you still exists. It never goes away, but I think you add the element of race to it, right? And when you add the element of race to it, now you get to this idea where we're letting you into this place, right? On the one hand, so how can you then complain about not getting paid? We always see it like this is your one opportunity. And what we see today for some of these athletes who got the Iowa strength coach fired, and what we see from some of Gundy's athletes at Oklahoma State, that threat of sitting them back, right? Also, you'll go back to the ghetto. That's held over these athletes' head. And if you start paying them, then that threat's no longer there anymore, right? And I think coaches, the system set up for the coaches and the institution to have these power to exploit these student athletes. But right now, as you mentioned, they have all the power because they're starting to see, as universities rush them back to get sick, right? 13 players from Texas just came out today that have COVID. They're realizing that they're rushing them to get sick because of how much money's on the table people made, right? And now that all eyes are on you and everybody's in this protest moment, they have an opportunity to push back. So it'll be really interesting to see as we go on these next couple weeks what athletes do as we come into the fall semester on campuses.
Ownership and leverage, it's huge.
Yeah. Can I ask you, like, looking, going out at a wider kind of lens, have we been able, or these protests and this galvanization? I mean, there have been murders of Black Americans, and we've had them before. But is it because, I have to say, that we've had this pause in entertainment and pause in sports, that people can't be distracted, and we're like, finally, like, this is a messed up, I'm gonna keep my language there, messed up system. I mean, is that also something, like, I'm wondering what has got us to this point where we're having these discussions finally? At least, we're having them more often, and we're not, feeling like I told Tanisha, like, I feel sometimes I shouldn't be in this panel because I don't have the history and I have perspective. But now I'm realizing, if I want to be told I'm wrong, I want to be in this conversation. And I told Tanisha, correct me, tell me, so is this what's going on right now?
I think people are getting aware. I'll quickly, wrap, and then, you guys can please, I want to hear what you guys are thinking too, because I think awareness is getting much more acknowledged, and humility is a huge part of it too, because that eliminates the ego. And once you know that, like, all right, I have a responsibility, I'm aware of my privilege, I'm aware I can't even comprehend some of the experiences that you've shared, please help educate me. That's a huge role of the ally within looking at community, right? And community psychology. And you have different functions, you have different roles and members within a community, right? You've got like leaders and sergeant of arms or whatever, but the ally is also so huge and important and understated when looking at communities and group dynamics, because Nancy, you will have the ability to go to your own social circles where I can't be, to now inform and educate others that I wouldn't have access to otherwise. And I think that's why the ally is so important now. And maybe this is happening today as opposed to 10, 20 years ago, or the history of humanity, since this has been, for 4 centuries of oppression and systemic racism, is that now we all have this in our pockets. And we're literally seeing like everything in real time in front of us. I cussed my brother out the other day because he DM'd me a video and I'm seeing somebody be hung. And I was like, I do not want to see somebody die at 7 a.m. Like, I don't want to wake up to that. But it's literally, there's so much happening that it's literally, how can you not be appalled? How can you not just be completely fed up and emotional and like, enough is enough? And I'm glad it's happening now, final, but this becomes a chapter and a bookmark in our history of when people have just had enough. And it takes, sports, entertainment, other segments of just understanding and being aware, to have the humility to know you got to do a self audit and look at your own space, whether it's in academia, sports, the boardroom, selling toilet paper, I don't care. The Ben and Jerry's ice cream people that have been just so awesome about saying, like, stop white supremacy and being honest about it and just calling it as it is, that's huge. But it starts with some humility and being like, all right, let me look in, see what, and learn, start talking to others, looking at the resources we've been putting out there, like within our syllabus, right? Reading, writing, podcasts, art, listen to these conversations, because once you get humble enough and realize that you do have a responsibility in this and planting a seed, so, the future has a chance, then this is all worth it. Because we don't want Breonna Taylor to be in vain, right? Why haven't those people been arrested yet? Why didn't we start with that, right? But I think, this has a hell of a lot to do with why I think now more than ever, we're being a bit more advantageous and having the courage to say something. Oh wait, you're on mute.
Oh, am I muted? Okay. Hey, I wanted to say nice shirt. But also, I agree with Nancy about the fact that just everyone isn't distracted right now. No one's had anything to do for maybe a month or two, and then this happens. And I feel like people were forced to watch it because it was so disgusting and so in your face and just extremely sad. Like, there's no way to watch that video and not get upset. And I feel like everything that I've seen, like you've seen the most horrible sides of the police departments, like throughout America, just with the protests and just seeing how quickly they are to react, how quickly they are to become violent. It's disgusting. And I'm not a crier. I'm not like super emotional person, and I've cried so much since that happened. I mean, even now getting emotional now, but even like right before my fight, when Ahmaud Arbery, when he got shot, it freaked me out because like when I jog, when my hair's out, I look like Ahmaud Arbery. You know, I look like a teenage boy when I go jogging down the street. And to think that like something that I do daily could get me shot just because I look suspicious, and the fact that I look suspicious is because I'm Black, like that just destroyed me, you know. So I had this huge speech ready, but unfortunately I didn't get to say it. But you know, like I really felt like no one cared. And when George Floyd happened, I didn't think people would care because of what happened to Ahmaud Arbery. And I didn't even hear about Breonna Taylor until the riot started. It was just, I never felt like people would care enough to take action. So I think because of the timing and because of the cell phone and, you know, just because people were being forced to watch these like really visceral images, it finally kind of hit something in people's heads. No matter what your background was, everyone was just like, shit, like there's something seriously wrong. We never want to see that, you know, and then you get really ugly responses too. And it just brings it to light even more. Oh, okay, like people are fucked up. People are people are racist. People are seeing Black bodies as animals or less than animals even. Like for someone to try to debate as to why George Floyd deserved what happened to him, just people seeing those responses, I think that made people even more angry. And that's what had people like coming out to protest and speaking out. And like even San Diego, you know, it's just like everyone's out. Like you'll see like Filipinos for Black Lives Matter, you know, just different communities coming out to support Black Lives Matter. And it's no longer this Black Lives Matters versus all lives matters. It's just everyone's on the same page and everyone's like, oh yeah, there is a problem. And it is a problem that Black people are dealing with more than the other people of color or other like disenfranchised groups in America. Like Black people are dealing with this at a higher rate. So I think just people being stuck at home and people being forced to see these images, people running out of Netflix shows to watch, you know, it really made people listen, and maybe that's what we needed. Maybe the country needed a pause to really just take a look at what's really going on. And even before Ahmaud Arbery, just the fact that Black people were affected more by COVID-19, I had no idea, and it just brought so many things to light that I think were easy to kind of skim over before the lockdown happened. And yeah, that's all I have to say about that. But I think the timing, it was just a perfect storm of things to happen to make people realize, oh, there is a problem with the way things are working when it comes to Black people in America.
Huge.
Thank you. And Angela, you won that fight, by the way.
Yes, you did. I was wearing
It's not about me right now.
You did. But no, I hope that it means so much that I feel like you said maybe a little bit of what you would have said at that moment, because I'm so grateful and thank you, because you're in training right now, that you're here and bringing to light, everyone taking their time out here. And Tunisha, I want to go into this because we've been talking about the reflecting, kind of digging into the past and history. How can we change? Like, what are some solutions that we can do? And I want, maybe if anyone wants to comment on what Angela just said, but I have something, another thing I want to bring up. But Tunisha, do you want to comment on what Angie just said?
Yeah, I think I 100% agree and understand your perspective of, like, you saw yourself in Ahmaud Arbery while he was jogging, because there's so many times like that where I felt kind of similar. Like, I think it was 1998. Like, I grew up in Riverside. There was a young Black woman who was killed in her car. She was asleep in her car after she got a flat tire, and the police just shot up her car. And after getting a flat tire, and it was around the corner from where I went to high school. And my parents were like, this is why we don't let you out, right? Like, this is why we've always said, like, don't call the police if you need help first. Like, that wasn't an outlet. That wasn't a go-to. It was always call some family or a close personal friend. And so I saw myself, I think her name was Taisha Miller, in Riverside, California, back in the 90s when I was in high school. And I saw myself in her. I was like, oh shit, like, that could have been me, right? Just flat tire down the street, past that gas station 1,000 times. And the hundreds of other instances where I've seen myself in that. And my parents, for perspective, like, they're 74. My mom grew up in Selma, Alabama. She remembers not being able to drink from certain fountains. She remembers being bused to certain schools. And even then, when she left, because she was like, screw this, came to San Francisco, in the 60s, and was still subject to certain things and knowing the difference. And so with all of this going on right now, my mom's kind of aggressive, maybe, very outspoken, but with all of this happening and going on, she just kind of had this look on her face like, didn't I tell you? This ain't new. Try to tell, like, she's the one that's like, I don't want to say I told you so, but like, this is what she has been preaching to me since, I'm 37. And it's not like I didn't believe her or that I didn't understand, but there wasn't this type of moment until now in my life that she's been like, listen, this is how I was brought up, uprising and Black and activism. And so it's just interesting. Like, now I'm having these deeper conversations with my parents because they have this other perspective. My dad growing up in San Diego, Vietnam vet, and, being drafted, like, but not choice. Like, these are things, this is my damn dad, And so when people talk about, like, oh, it's so long ago, your ancestors. I'm like, ancestors? You mean my mom? But we're not talking about an ancestor. We're talking about somebody that just made me grits. She's right there. Like, I'm glad that this is, like you said, kind of like that perfect storm of people realizing that there are different, racism isn't just like burning crosses and tiki torches, even though that's a thing now in Charlottesville, that very fine people, whatever. But it's awareness, it's privilege, and it's systemic. And so I think, I don't know, Nancy, to maybe try and answer the question about, like, what can we do? I think at some point we have to go from talking to doing, and it's that, what do we do, right? Take 10 of your friends and make sure they're registered to vote. Create some task forces to make sure that we are aware of what's going on and when your county's voting and all. It's making sure that we're talking to the youth. If you're a parent, it's making sure that you're completely aware of the past and making sure that now you're forcing your bosses and you're forcing your own individual spaces to make sure that there's somebody who represents your best interests, because obviously no one has up until now, or now we have to force them to. So whether it's academia, it's, you know, families, domestic, it's calling people out too and making people be accountable and forcing them to be humble in whatever certain circles that you have. But it's obviously too, first and foremost, like we have centuries to make up, right? So none of this is going to happen overnight, and we have to be aware of that. But to plant these seeds, these types of conversations and voting and all that stuff, this is going to take a long time to fix. This is not a Band-Aid. We want to create a permanent solution. And it's going to take individual effort from everyone in all of our different spaces to make sure that this stuff gets corrected.
No, thank you. Because I wanted to bring up, Tunisha, I told you about this, and some of you guys may have seen on Instagram, because I want to talk about the unconscious racism that's internalized. And that's something that I think people don't want to see because they feel guilty and they just don't want to acknowledge. And I was given this by Karen Bryant, told me on Instagram that she wrote a very simple thing. I mean, it was remembering something, but she wanted to show about this systemic racism. And she was telling her husband, remember the time we were flying with our baby girl and the flight attendant asked if you two wanted to move seats away from me and be more comfortable. Yeah, good times. And, you know, she wrote hashtag racism sucks, hashtag end racism. And what Karen wanted me to know is that she said a great majority of people wanted to negate her experience and tell her, wait, you shouldn't have felt that that was racist. And I want to know what's going on there and how can we stop that? Because
as a pick me, because I think there is an exhaustion, I'll say, and I feel an exhaustion for pointing out what people should be conscious of. Like we use the word microaggression. When is it just aggression? When is it just aggressive? And a lot of smart people get to say, I didn't understand that's what's going on. And so the shift has to be taking responsibility to identify inequity, injustice, the videos on TV. It shouldn't take actual proof circulating to believe these things are happening. And yet some people will see them and still say, well, that wasn't racist or that was. So, I mean, I think accountability comes all the way down, not for somebody to have to point out to you, this is how racism works. I've started, making people say anti-Blackness instead of racism, because racism gets to, hold a lot. But saying I am against something, and that still doesn't mean being pro-Black. That's something else altogether, and nobody's talking about pro-Blackness. And so I think people have gotten a lot of passes for saying what they weren't conscious of, when really it's choosing not to accept the realities of anti-Black violence.
Now that is a lot. It's a lot, and I'm glad you brought up too, like that kind of difference between, racism and then just choosing to be ignorant, and that accountability that we need to reinforce, right? It's like it's like I've always said this, like, okay, I am pro checking people. If you see something, say something, right? And it's like whenever you see something that's wrong, and it can cost people family. It could cost people. There's a lot of value in that, and it's a hard thing to do. And people have different, not only values but personalities, and some just can't do that. Like, how do you stand up to somebody, right, or something? And so there's just, how do you make someone be accountable is so hard, and especially, if the dangers that we have to acknowledge that if, a Black person wanted to stand up and say something, it's like, oh, you have the cost of dying now because of it,
In broad daylight for whatever the charge is decided to be.
Yeah, like I shared this story with Nancy. It's like I'm in the middle of moving, right? Like just moved from like LA to Vegas, and it was a horrible experience. That's why there's boxes still everywhere, because I've got to move again. And I was going apeshit. I was in the streets just like cussing out the managers. And I was like, and then like I called a friend of mine to try and calm me down. And he was like, if you don't go inside right now, one of these people are going to see you as the fresh new giant black person in this black and call the damn cops. Because I'm over here cussing and swearing at people. That's a unique experience just to me, where I had to literally like stop screaming, stop crying, and just take a minute and be like, oh shit, you're right. And then I have to like run upstairs and have my own private moment, right? But so when you see something wrong, the ability, like the fact that we can't be honest and authentic like in that time because, Karen may call the cops or something like that. Those are real things that I now have to be aware of and continue to be conscious of. So accountability is huge. How to do it, I don't have that answer at all. But I don't know. That's something just individually in different communities. How can you or building the comfort to have the authority to check somebody within your own group? It's huge. And it can't be just responsible to Black people, which we now understand is the huge conversation. We didn't start this problem. We can't be responsible for fixing it too. So y'all gotta go, like it's a global effort in this. And that building that accountability, is just literally going to be like one person at a time.
Can I ask
Not waiting
a
to
question?
be checked. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I had a question. This might be particularly for Lou, because it seems like you're a real historian of the fight game. But since we're talking about the relationship of race and combat sports specifically, I feel like talking about, I don't know if the terminology is soft racism, but when we talk about sort of the systemic racism and how it sort of permeates all language and all notions of how white people think about Black people or how people interact with each other. And I always think about, I've noticed it for years, he's not there anymore, but for you MMA fans, whenever Mike Goldberg, the UFC play-by-play guy for years, he loved to talk about Rocky figures, and he romanticized great American fighters and guys who, came from scrappy areas and they were blue collar guys. And every time he mentioned those characters, they were always white guys, always the hardworking blue collar Rocky figures who came up from nothing and did it without the athleticism. They were always white guys. It's almost like you feel like it's like Hoosier, like that movie Hoosiers or something like that. You sort of romanticizing these particular American notions. And I was just curious, historically speaking, if that's a common thing in combat sports and in sports in general, to have like the way we speak about people, even if doesn't appear to be explicitly racist in that, oh, you're not saying I hate this group of people, but it is racist in that it perpetuates notions of value, Americanness, like hard work, the values that we're supposed to love and respect, because we only speak about those things in terms of particular kinds of athletes.
Yeah, shameless plug. Chapter 5, I talk a lot. I mean, the whole book's about race, right? And chapter 5, I really talk about some of the stuff you're talking about and how we see Black bodies or white bodies. But one of the things that I talk about in this book is really when sports become popular, and specifically boxing becomes popular amongst the Black middle class, not as fighters, but supporting the fighters. And what they would say and what you would read is, especially in boxing, the only way to succeed in combat sports or boxing is hard work, right? And at a time when you're trying to prove your citizenship, right? And so when you had the rise of the Black boxer in America, you also have the rise of Jim Crow. And so you're pointing to these narratives about these fighters working hard and saving their money or going broke. But you're pointing to these basic ideas. And that's how sports function in America, by the way, right? We love sport in America because somehow it proves, right, these ideas that we hold dear in America about meritocracy, about hard work, about grit. And this is what you see in the Black athlete. Now, to counter that, once you start to see success with these Black boxers, is, well, you stop letting them fight white fighters, right? And you have Jim Crow, you have battle royals. So we talked about Invisible Man earlier when we started this off. You throw 10 black guys in the ring and let them wail at each other just to mock them. You start talking about natural ability, right? So these language about natural ability versus hard work will start to shift as a way to push back against some of these ideas about black athletes. So the hard worker, the guy, the gritty, tough guy becomes the white guy. And you see it early on about 100 years ago. And chapter 5 really highlights that in the Jim Jeffries, Jack Johnson fight. Where a lot of the white press is looking at Jim Jeffries and trying to imagine themselves in him, trying to think up some way that he can win, beat Jack Johnson, even though he's had a 5-year layoff. And you still see that. And that's why Rocky is so popular, all of them. But I think that's why Creed is so important, right? Because it starts to push back about that narrative. Of course, it's Rocky as a white guy teaching Creed how to work hard. Rocky 3 is so important because now Rocky has to go into the ghetto, right? Los Angeles ghetto, and learn how to fight black or whatever that is, right? Where Apollo Creed gives him some rhythm, and then somehow Rocky's able to beat him on the beach in a race. Rocky 4, right, is about lost white manhood, right? He loses to Drago, this guy who's built by science, and the only way he gets it back is to go into the mountains, right? No technology. It's just him, the mountains, and Duke, and they're out there training, and they're whatever, doing pull-ups and stuff like that. We love movies like that. We love Rudy. We love Hoosiers. We love Invincible. We love Miracle. They all have the same thing in common, and that is like white working class manhood, right? Overcoming all the odds, whatever those odds are, right? For them, it's just being white in sports. And I think that plays big in sport and combat sport, and it plays big in the way we watch it. I mean, Floyd Mayweather is as much as a jerk he is outside of the ring, he understood that, right? He played into these narratives. I'm gonna be this bad black guy, and I'm gonna go ahead and make me a $500 million, right? That fight with Ricky Hatton, or the last major fight that we had before COVID shut down, Wilder and Tyson Fury, right? Like I think part of that fight was seen in these terms of race. It was really weird the way they tried to work that. And so, yeah, you're right. Like that's just the narrative that we see sports. We see basketball the same way. Your scrappy guys, your gym rats. We see football the same way. Your little slot receiver has to be tough. He has hands, and so if you watch sports, you understand these things without them having to talk about race, right? You understand all these terminologies.
Yeah, you're absolutely right in that transcends across all sports. Drew Brees, the technician, so practical, and Cam Newton, flashy, as just other words that are used, other adjectives that are used to describe black athletes versus white. It's timeless, per your point, and the historic timeline of how society and media covers black athletes in sports, period. I want to be cognizant of time because I realized we're going on 2 hours. Oh, Lou, you got another point, please?
One more thing, and I want to, because Angela brought this up, and I think it's important to say about black women and how they didn't present her as beautiful. And we do this in America with black women as beautiful. And there's only been this short period of time where we did this with black women athletes where they had to be beautiful, and that's the Cold War. So if you look like track and field during the Cold War, we pumped up black women because track and field was the sport, and we were going against Russia. So what we were doing with Russia, because we saw them as communists, we'll say, well, they were ugly and they were muscular, and American women by default had to be beautiful. Well, if you're only showing Leave It to Beaver and white women, that's fine. But when it comes to Olympics every 4 years, the women that you saw were black women. So all of a sudden, if you're looking at the 48 games, 52 games, 56 games, 60 games, someone like a Wilma Rudolph, now we're celebrating black women as beautiful. There's this famous or infamous Sports Illustrated cover. You can look it up in 1964. They have white women who don't even make the track and field team on the cover of Sports Illustrated as the representation of beauty. They had like this big bonnet hair and stuff like that. And black women got upset because they're like, wait a minute, we dust them. And they're not even going to represent the team. And yet somehow you're trying to push back this narrative that you've been working on for a couple of years about us being beautiful. And I think that's how we can understand how the UFC does Angela wrong, right? That's how we can understand how we do Serena wrong. We look at her muscles all of a sudden, instead of saying this is beautiful, we look at them like, oh, right. And this is the narrative. The most famous track team, Tennessee State women, the coach, Ed Temple, black man, right, coach of this, he would say, I want foxes, not oxes. And what he meant by that is, look, when it comes to time to run, you run. When you're done running, you put on a dress, you do your makeup, because he understood how America saw Black women. He understood these Black women were going to represent the race. And I'll stop there. But when this 30 for 30 comes out on FloJo, pay attention to how they depict her versus Jackie Joyner-Kersee, right? When we talk about Black women, muscles, and beauty. But I'll stop there. I know we're running on time. Done.
Thank you. I'm so glad you brought that up too. Angela, did you want to comment on what Lou said before we wrap up?
Hold on. How do I unmute?
Hear you.
Oh, wow. That was muted. Yeah, I don't. It's a weird one. You know, I think in definitely in a sport too, where you have human judges, you have huge marketing pushes on certain athletes. I think a lot of that stuff is obvious to the people who live through it. Like, it's obvious to the Black community, but it seems like complaining to everyone else. So it's always hard to address subjects like that, especially like as myself. Like, I have to rely on other people bringing it up, because if I say something like that, I just look like I look either ungrateful, I look I don't know, jealous of other athletes, or I just seem to be complaining about something that isn't there. So as an athlete, it's really hard to kind of walk that tightrope where you just try to present yourself in a way that people can't say anything bad about you, you know? So yeah, it's really tough. And I think most of the female fighters have to deal with that regardless of race. Like, they all have to deal with this image, this male gaze type of thing where they have to be beautiful outside of the cage, and they have to always present themselves well. A lot of girls fight in makeup. A lot of girls, you know, won't be seen without fake eyelashes. You know, it's just this. There are crazy things that we have to deal with as females that the men don't have to deal with, and just being Black, I feel like just puts this extra layer of ugly on you to when it comes to like the marketing departments, and when it comes to the fans, and it's and yeah, you have to do a lot to combat that. So I've dealt with that maybe for the last 5 years, like since I got in the UFC, and I've started to figure out how to make myself look presentable. You know, even though I'm an athlete that, you know, I never worried about that before. I never worried about appearance. I always liked my skills to speak for me, and my skills to be the thing that made me popular, not how good I clean up or you know, how big my ass is or anything. I'm sorry, I'm big. But is there anything like that? But yeah, you do see the people who look a certain way, who show themselves off. You do see them getting more opportunities sometimes than the people who are just hardworking. So it's a tough balance. But I think the one equalizer is, if you are lucky enough to be on top, it doesn't matter what you look like at that point. You know, there are some champions out there that you know people wouldn't look at them twice, but once they become champion, it's like, oh wow, you're great, you're gorgeous, you know. And it doesn't matter at that point because you're a winner. You're doing what you're supposed to do, and you're the greatest of all time. So I think that's the only equalizer there is if you are lucky enough, if you're skilled enough to be on top, then it doesn't matter what you look like. And that's why you see a lot of people, I guess, arguing that. I kind of lost my train of thought, but yeah, that's all it is. It's hard, you know. It's hard to deal with that double standard of having to be a fighter, but also having to be attractive and having to appeal to everyone, not just, you know, people who like black chicks. So yeah, there's definitely that tightrope that you have to walk when you're a female fighter or a female athlete.
No, for sure. I want to ask Sean quickly too, before we wrap up, kind of about that in regards to like black male or in masculinity, and particularly like in pro wrestling. It's like, have you ever like walked into a locker room and be in that space where it's like, okay, you have to be, dial it down a little bit and not as masculine because you're a large dude. You go by the urban juggernaut, right? And so have you ever felt like, or gotten that conversation afterwards where like, oh, I thought you'd be different. And like that type of, they're surprised almost by how nice you actually are and soft-spoken and passionate.
Oh boy, that comes a lot. Yeah, we like I said, we've known each other a little bit too. People get absolutely shocked, especially like I said, we talked about earlier, especially being black. It's sad. Like I said, it's just how nice I really am. You know what I'm saying? I'm very cold, very chill. I've had people like terrified. Like, most wrestling fans, they understand what we do. But I've walked to my car or something, and I see people like running, like putting things away. Yeah, like fast. Like there, you're like, whatever. I'm like, hey, it's cool.
Sean, even the last show that we worked together at Maverick Wrestling in LA, I remember people were blown away just by your athleticism, right? Because they see a big guy, but you're jumping over the top rope and you have high flying moves. So even from like an ability standpoint, like where Angela is saying, it's like, you want to let your performance speak for yourself. I saw the switch in fans' eyes that were exposed to you for the first time and were at one point like, oh shit, he's big, scary. But then they're like, oh, like he has personality. And because even the promos that you cut even before, like I remember, going upstairs and talking to like Brandon and Paul London about it. And I was like, dude's good. And he lets you in. And of course, pro wrestling has that narrative flexibility, but you have such a great responsibility and you're doing it so well and by creating new narratives and making people think differently. So I want to applaud you in that too.
Yeah, appreciate that. And like I said, the urban juggernaut, for years I tried to be sometimes, you fluctuate, you go through creative stuff. And at the end of the day, everybody, I realize more people know me due to social media. They know what I do in the community and know I do wrestling. So I was like, you know what? I'm tired of trying to be, I said, I'm gonna just be me. So Urban Juggernaut is basically Sean, I'm trying to represent the hood in a positive way, and especially black imagery in a positive way too. Like I said, I'm tough in the ring, but even just the way, like I said, I speak, try to clear as I can, all that, because imagery is everything right now. You know what I'm saying? More positive, not only for our youth, for the world, you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, don't be scared. I heard you guys talking about this earlier, and I was, just chilling listening. Don't be scared to have a voice. If you see something wrong going on, and I'm willing to, like I said, if I, if you get mad at me, I heard you guys talking about, if you get mad at me for speaking up, I've got to, it's some wrestlers really showing their ass right now, and even fans. I'm like, you guys know that I'm black, right? You guys know that the wrestlers you go to see, there's African-American wrestlers, right? Are you going to like speak against, like cheer, like there's people really like, supporting that cop. I'm like, hi, why are you my friend? What's going on, And then, so that, like I said, it's a lot of uneducation. It's a lot of ignorance. So what I can do, like I said, and I appreciate everybody on the panel, and you know what I'm saying, I'm follow all you guys, all that. All I can do is just keep being me and keep meeting people like you all who are pushing the positivity, the message, and the voice, because it's going to take, it's going to take everyone to combat all what's going on. You know what I'm saying? Everybody. I'm glad more and more people are standing up and like, finally, this, like I said, justice to African Americans is wrong. Adjustment to Latinos, America, it's got issues. It's not, like I said, it's, I appreciate I live here versus, it could be even like, who knows where worse. Please don't act like this country is just, the Star Spangled Banner, the see-through shot. That's all beautiful and everything, but this country has problems and issues, and we won't be that great country until we nip it in the bud. I'm sorry, and it's going to take we all know it's going to take a long, long time. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, I really hope there's little things. We get one more George Floyd incident, or worse on this scale, man. So.
No, well said.
Because I live in Inglewood, like I said, I'm in a beautiful city, but I'm near South Central, and I'm near, Watts, Compton, all that. So I get to hear everybody's voice, wrestling, you guys. I get to hear from, and I'm just tell y'all now, the hood is not going to take it anymore. If that happens again, this is probably. Yeah. I'm a believer. Just come on, America. We got to get it together.
No, well said. I think we're all in agreement with that. Nancy, do you want to? I know, we're going over like 2 hours, so I appreciate everybody being here and stuff, and we want to be respectful of your time. So I guess maybe if we want to go around and just say like, where can people find us? And Nancy, you want to take us through that?
No, and I would love that. And maybe we'll start with you, Janica. If you'll say, where people can, you're at, UNC Charlotte. Do you have anything else to say? I think I really loved what Sean said about realizing what's going on, the fractured country we live in. Because I know that you've investigated narratives. Yeah. And I guess we've been talking about, we have false narratives, we have this idea of rags to riches, that exists, and it's a false consciousness that just keeps some, safe. Do you have some final thoughts on that?
The stories are there, whether people have chosen to see them or not to see them. The stories have been there. Study writing, study African-American literature. We look at the media. There are only so many ways we can turn away from what's going on. So acknowledging that those narratives have been there over time and looking for them, number one. I'm at UNC Charlotte, Women's and Gender Studies in English. I'm on Twitter at JNBlue. I write about freedom narratives. I write children's books. And so from the bottom, the youngest kids all the way up, we're having these same conversations. But, heads up, America, as Sean said, it can't keep happening. America will break. And America systems are broken in many ways. So stories are there. We just have to look at them. And thank y'all for this platform as well.
Thank you, Janica. Josh, do you have any final words, and where can people find you?
Hey, you can find me I think I'm Jay Rosenblatt1 everywhere. But I have no final words, except it was a pleasure to talk to you guys and a pleasure to listen to you guys. And it's, these platforms are always completely fascinating. So thanks for everyone for being involved.
Thank you. And Julie, you've been an observer, but if you have any final thoughts of reflection on this discussion, please let us have it, and where people can find you.
Well, one, I think reflection I've had on being an observer is, I think this is a good time for a white woman to shut the fuck up and listen. Pardon my language. I'm excluding you from that, Nancy, because obviously you're running this panel. Yeah, I think it's a good time for me to just shut up and listen. And Dr. Singleton, you know that I'm pretty outspoken. I say a lot of stuff, and I thank you guys for coming on here and speaking. It's really nice to see some faces like Dr. Moore and Angela again, who I haven't seen in a while. But yeah, thank you guys. And I hope I don't discredit you.
Thanks, Julie. And then let's go to Sean. Where can people find you? And do you have any final words?
Man, let's see. I got so much social media. Obviously,
Let's hear it.
at urban_J8 number 84 on IG. Sean Black on Facebook, SEAN Black, and then man, Twitter. I'll give all my info this to Tanisha, because it'll be forever. That'll be a whole nother hour.
City champ, I know you got all kind. I'm like, please unblock this. Like, yeah.
Thank you. Lewis, where can we find you, and any final words?
Let me see. No final words. I'm at LouMore12 on Twitter. We have a podcast called the Black Athlete Podcast, where we talk about Black athletes. Just dropped the episode today on Juneteenth. The books are I Fight for Living. Look at the shameless plugs. I Fight for Living, and then there's the one on civil rights and sports. We Will Win the Day. Thanks for having me. This has been great. Sorry about my dog and my kids earlier. By the way, I hope that wasn't a distraction. So
We didn't hear anything. So yeah, no. Perfect. And just to let everyone know, everyone's books and articles we've tried to link to, and we put the Amazon link on the YouTube as well. So read some amazing literature here as well. Angela Hill, thank you so much for coming as well. Any last thoughts? And where can people find you?
No last thoughts. I think just keep doing what you're doing, keep educating people. I think I need to educate myself a bit too. And I'm very happy with everything that's been going on, just all the activism that's been happening in the past few weeks. And I just hope it continues. I hope it's not just a flash in the pan, and I hope people continue to speak out and continue to try to make changes for the better for not just the Black community, but for everyone in America. It's only going to benefit everyone if the Black community is taken care of. You guys can follow me on Twitter, Angie Overkill, Instagram. I got Angie Overkill on everything, I think, and Facebook. But yeah, get an Overkill t-shirt. Yeah. Just follow me, follow my career, root for me when I fight. I appreciate it. And thanks for having me. This was a great talk.
Thank you so much. I have an Overkill shirt as well, but we thought that would be a little crazy if both of us wore it.
Like overkill? No.
Overkill.
Yeah, because that's why you're professor of literature. That
I love it. I love it.
Oh, it would be overkill. So I'm going to have Tanisha take the last word, but you can find more about my course, Writing and Fighting, at writeandfight.com. And I'm at Nancy Ann Kidder on Twitter. And I appreciate all of the panelists here so much. I have learned so much. Thank you for taking my questions. And even if they were not on the mark and I was rambling, thank you for trying to answer them and doing such a thoughtful way. And I'm going to give it on to Tanisha.
Well, thanks. And I'm just looking at Sean's puppy right now. Sorry. You can find me. I'm at T Singleton Says on Twitter, TunishaSingleton.com. I try and write some blogs and keep some academic resources up there as well for people to, get a little more educated and expand their intake and their content. My last words, I don't know. I think so much has been said here. I thank everyone for taking out this time. It can't be overstated how important these conversations are. And representation matters across the board. It's, as I open this talk about, I've only had 3 Black teachers in my entire life of 22 years of school. I got called the N-word for the first time when I was 9 years old. Representation matters across the board, and everyone deserves a seat at the table. And we won't make that type of significant change if we don't believe in ourselves. And that's everyone. every race, every creed, every age, we have to find value in in our experiences. Don't undervalue or belittle ourselves and the impact that you can have. If you see something, say something, because you never know the impact that it'll have on somebody. And so using our various outlets, whether it's between cutting a promo for a pro wrestling show or after a win in the cage and Joe Rogan to ask you what you want to say, whether it's in an academic class, what you assign as literature, whether it's at the nail salon and you're rapping with your girl, you know, wherever you are, don't underestimate the power that you can have even in just a little conversation and in passing by. And the allies, communities are so important, and we all need to do our own self-audit, an internal look inside, and realize that there are many more touch points that we probably never considered as being an incremental moment in somebody else's life. And it takes some awareness and humility to realize that. And I thank you all again. I think, yeah, those are kind of my final thoughts.
Don't wait for Black people to do the work.
Don't wait. We all can, everyone has.
Black people been doing the work. Don't wait.
Yeah, and everyone has a vote in this, quite literally. So, you're an adult. So we all need to be aware of that and take responsibility. Be accountable.
Thank you, Tunisha. And I'm not saying anything else. Just
Thank y'all.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right.
until next.
Until next time.
To be continued.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.